Live.
All right, welcome back to the Chabinet meeting yet again. It's been another interesting week as we get closer and closer to what at this point is obviously an inevitability of a Joe Biden presidency. I am the department chair,
I am the Chabinet. Cabinet?
and
I'm the Cabinet. We are the Chabinet.
Cabinet.
Right.
We are the Chabinet. Yeah, we see. We got a. We make one piece of furniture in a room, so we we are collective in
This is
some
what I
way.
get for that foolishness.
So definitely have some interesting pieces. I know that these now I'm thinking in my head as I'm talking. I'm going to second guess myself. The cabinet has an interesting article about the NRA, which is some news that just popped up. I have an interesting article that's kind of in the weeds about some major businesses leading California, although that's been a trend of the last couple of years. But before we get into that, Joe Biden on Thursday made a speech, which I guess was sort of a feeler. He planned on spending, what was it, 1.9 trillion
Yeah,
dollars.
let's just round it off. What's 100 billion here or there? So a
Mm-hmm.
$2 trillion bill
Mm-hmm.
again, par for the course. I think the Republicans would have done the same thing if Trump had won and they controlled the Senate. I think it would have been 1.7 trillion or something like that, and they would have been arguing back and forth.
Yeah, and the big point of, I don't even call it contention, but the biggest thing they're putting is there will be 1,400. Well, actually, let me restart. When Joe Biden was aiding the two now what will eventually be senators for the state of Georgia, he said, "I promise that it will be $2,000 checks. We will give out $2,000 checks when these two men come into office."
Okay.
Well, that point
Well,
thing came down to
clearly taking advantage of Mitch McConnell's sticking point. Um,
mm-hmm.
I'm at a loss with that. I don't, 600, 2,000. You're printing money. I'm watching the prices of everything go up at a prodigious rate. There's no
Mm-hmm.
way my income's going to keep up with this increase, and there's no way that $600 or $2,000 or $5,000 is going to make up for it. In fact, the more you print, the worse it's going to be down the road.
And I can't, I've been talking to some of the individuals we work with on a daily basis, trying to explain like what will this mean down the road. And I think I'll give credit to Tim Pool on this one, where they were saying, what was it, 35% of the money in the last in the last couple of years, 35% of it has been printed within the last year.
In terms of like the total debt, yes.
Like
COVID,
just
COVID was worse for the debt than the 2008 stock market crash was. Or stock market crash? The 2008 housing bubble collapse was uh, for the U.S. economy.
the yeah, we're at 27. 27.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can go look at the debt clock.
That's
Maybe
exactly
I'll
what I'm
put the link in
staring
the.
at right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, here I can open it up, but we'll put the link in the channel description if we have to. But
Yes,
I
please
mean,
scare people, just like you
I,
scare some of our students.
I don't know. I think it's a. I mean, these
Yeah.
are just numbers to you. They're not numbers with any real meaning unless you have some grounding in economic theory and fiscal. Um, I don't know, basic fiscal responsibility, which the government has no such thing, and which the average person, it seems now, has no such thing. So, hey,
No.
I'm borrowing lots of money to do all these kinds of things. Why shouldn't the government borrow lots of money? What's the difference? Let's all borrow money.
Yeah. I mean, and especially this is the government handing money to you, in a nice, assured way to make you want to vote in their general direction. But in the long run, obviously, we're going to have to see where this takes
So,
us. But no
somewhere on
one's
this
thinking.
page is the local debt per citizen, right? So
It
on
yes,
top of it,
yes. If you go, what do you want to do? You want to go to like Pennsylvania?
no, I just want to see how much the average United States citizen owes privately
Oh,
to
that's
credit card companies and stuff.
debt per citizen or debt per taxpayer.
No, no. So you see, that's how much of the government's debt each citizen would have to pay if we were to divvy it all up, which is also horrifying, especially when you realize that the citizen and taxpayer numbers are significantly different,
Mhm.
and that there are more citizens, significantly more citizens than taxpayers, um, more than half. But no, no. What I'm curious about is like how much
Right.
private debt does the average person have on top of this?
And that's I'm looking for that. I'm
Because
sure it's
we've
here
created,
somewhere.
again, inflation is good for debtors, which is all good and well if you're a debtor, but it also creates a circumstance where it encourages you to be fiscally irresponsible. Hey, if I borrow $10 today, since that'll be worth like $1 tomorrow, when I pay it back, it won't hurt as much.
Oh, I think I found it here.
Yep, I know
Although
it's on this page.
they say liability per citizen, would you say it would be that?
Where do you see that?
The very bottom right hand corner,
Bottom right hand corner.
because it goes
Household
with
assets. So, no, that's just the Social Security sorry, United States unfunded liabilities per citizen. So that's the amount that each person would owe if the United States were actually to fulfill all of its commitments.
yeah, debt per citizen equals the U.S. national unfunded
Yeah.
liability divided
So
by
maybe this
means.
page doesn't have it on it, but yeah, you can also find that, and that's also horrific.
And, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
not
no,
good
there you
looking.
go, local debt. Oh no, wait,
Where do you see
that's
it?
no, wait, those are municipal bonds. Okay.
The fact that we're
But
having that much
there's so many
difficulty
different kinds of debt.
is scary in itself.
Oh, no, no, here you go. Total personal debt. Personal debt per citizen. The average United States citizen owes $60,000 to a bank
Oh,
or,
it's funny. I just found it. Yeah,
yeah, on
right
top of
there.
all that other stuff.
Oh God.
Now, I myself owe about $5,000, and then I am beholden to nobody for nothing. But that's rare, and I live modestly. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a family to try and raise under this crazy system where we're printing money like mad.
Mm-hmm.
You would be
Yes.
wise to go into debt.
Yes. I just refinanced my house, so I'm sitting, a few hundred $1,000 here, but like,
Right. I
I
mean,
mean,
and you're putting equity in a house. Look, if you
right,
liquidated everything, it probably wouldn't come out to you owing a few $100,000. But if you
exactly,
liquidated everything, it would probably come out to you owing tens of thousands of dollars.
right. I mean, we're doing a pretty good job. I know my wife has a lot of, has to still pay for her college. My college, I paid for my college. That's
Right.
done. So in the long run, I know I'm going to be able to come out on top. But
Yeah,
still,
you would be able to if the government were racing to get ahead of you and make things worse and
hmm
make it and disincentivize you from being responsible.
right. So in any case, and the flip side to this is obviously there's a lot of people in desperate need. Here we are. I'm sitting in a nice, comfortable house with heat in the middle of winter. I know there's people out there in need, but this trickle of money that they're throwing out there is not going to fix things. It may fix the things now, especially if you need groceries and whatnot. But
Well, when you print money, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're either saying we're going to raise taxes to pay this back sometime down the future, or you're saying we're never going to pay this back, and therefore, there's just going to be more money in circulation in the system, and therefore, yeah, your dollar's going to buy less,
right,
and that's what's
I mean,
happening. You can
you and I
already
should
see that happening.
really consider watching the State of the Union live, so we can, him and haw and throw things at our computers at
Oh
Joe
yeah,
Biden.
I can bring the bingo scorecard, and we can have games.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we could do that, and then we can complain, be like, what?
yeah.
Oh, but
I'm game for
all
that.
right,
All right, so that's enough distraction. I mean, look, this number is going to apparently, according to the previous three U.S. administrations, I should just expect this number to double every administration and a half. It's the new Moore's law.
my God. Yeah, then we have yeah. If you go into
I mean,
future
the rate at
U.S.
which it trickles up there is irrelevant compared to the rate at which it leaps up whenever they decide that some new emergency has occurred. So
yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
just starting off the year good with another 2 trillion, as though we didn't spend 9 trillion last year against the 3 trillion that they were supposed to spend.
and I'm sure this is not going to be the end of it.
No, it
As
never is.
this is going to be much more, and it's going to be not pretty. Um, so we are going to get ahead here
Meanwhile,
before we get
speaking of crippling debt, California is, if you can believe it, California is in worse shape proportionally than the United States government.
out, and that I guess there's a reason that people are moving out, and that's a fantastic transition. Thank you for pulling me out of that from staring at the numbers just blinking continuously. So my article, which I believe the cabinet is probably getting ready there. KQED did an article, and mind you, this has been happening for some time. And the main event of Tesla moving out has spurred a lot of articles in the last couple of, you could say, months. But I've been trying to pay attention more and more to the West Coast, to looking at these big centers, obviously, especially California, and you're looking at these massive, huge tech businesses that are just like, nope, peace out, we're leaving. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Oracle is kind of not quite a household name, right?
Right.
It is among people who understand computers and code and things like this. Um, it's it, Oracle makes a lot of software products that
Mm-hmm.
undergird a lot of things you use every day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of more user-friendly software has people using Oracle software to produce it. Things like this. So they've been around a long time. They were on a time a competitor of Microsoft. They don't really compete directly anymore because they've diverged and they have different interests. But they're not small. If you had asked me, I don't know, in 2002, what are the three biggest tech companies in the United States? It might have been something like Microsoft, Intel, Oracle,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So, in any case,
Yeah, and they've been buying up a number of smaller companies. I remember actually sometime in, I think it was early 2020, they bought some other interesting companies. And yeah, I mean, Oracle focuses initially on Oracle. When you see the picture there provided of Oracle,
yep.
but they're not the only business. So I'm going to read through this article and we'll just briefly talk about it. It's fairly short, so I'm going to speed through. So so this is from December 22nd. Of last year. And it says, starting here, the recent news that Oracle, the second largest software market in the world, plans to move its corporate headquarters from Silicon Valley to Austin. And it has resurrected familiar headlines, such as that California is finally going to pay for its so called hostility towards business. Coming on the heels of the recent announcement by Hewlett Packard and Silicon Valley's marquee company to move its headquarters to Texas, along with Tesla founder Elon Musk's exodus to Lone Star State, Oracle's decision has shaken some of the Bay Area business leaders. Quote, the regulatory scheme is really tough to work through. Everything takes much longer, costs more money, said Jim Wunderman, president and CEO of the Bay Area Council. It's very troubling news because it's not unexpected, said Jim Wunderman, president and CEO of the Bay Area Council. Again. So, by the way, this obviously was not expected. The one thing you can say about COVID is that when it struck, and you're going to see it later on in the article, these guys were not totally saying they didn't expect this, but at the same time, when all the news came out, everything I was hearing and reading was, we did not see this coming.
Well, this is, and I do think he's a little bit of a narcissist. So I say so. I quote him with a grain of salt. But this is what Peter Zion has been banging on about with his very widely advertised Disunited Nations book, where he says, yeah, COVID's going to change some things, but not in ways that are unexpected. It's just going
Mm-hmm.
to accelerate what anybody who could read the tea leaves saw was going to happen anyway.
Right, and that's exactly what's in this article. Here, let me keep moving. We've been hearing from a lot of companies, from individuals who are talking about this, and it's been on the agenda for a while now, even pre-pandemic. But I think the pandemic really expedited a lot of organizations thinking about their future strategy and remote work, and the wildfires didn't help. Based in San Francisco, the Bay Area Council advocates for policies that make the region hospitable to businesses and its workforce, but it's also mindful of regional politics, which lean heavily Democratic and progressive. The council often supports taxes to improve infrastructure and transit, and it's also endorsed Proposition 30, Governor Jerry Brown's 2012 sales and income tax increase measure aimed at especially at high income earners. So I
Right.
looked that up real quick. That bill at least the vast majority of that bill was solely aimed at massive big tech to pay for the huge chunk of money
Of
that California can't
California's
pay for.
crippling debt because of all the
Right,
things it promises to do for everybody.
right. It's public schools. So I'm using, yes,
But
I
it's
am
it's not
using,
just it's not just like public schools, right? It's like
right.
every public school will have a swimming pool of this size. Every public school will have a science lab with these, and so forth and so on, right? I mean, it can't just be. Well, it may well also be like a requirement of licensure for the teachers that, we're going to have people of this quality with this GPA in these schools thing too.
Right. Yeah, it's 6 billion. This was meant to cover the $6 billion cuts to the education program.
This
That's what
is
this tax
this
was
is
meant
going
to
to
fix.
actually result in less revenue because of basic things like the Laffer curve. Heck, reading Gibbon last year, I found a section where or 2 years back, the Roman Empire decides to go into, I think, regions in Illyria, a traditionally very farm-heavy region, and
Mhm.
just increase the taxes in the hopes of solving some of their revenue problems. And lo and behold, suddenly there was a great lower population recorded in Illyria on the census. Suddenly, everybody who had property in Illyria got the hell out of Dodge.
That is definitely not something that you can't find in history if you do a little bit of digging of how that works.
It's just
Um,
like, oh, so tilling this land is no longer profitable? I won't till it.
Peace out. Goodbye. But Wonderman says too many politicians, especially in Sacramento, are not in touch with the needs of businesses. Quote, so what we see is numerous pieces of legislation that sort of further restrict businesses' abilities to function the way businesses would prefer to function, he said. The regulatory scheme is really tough to work through. Yeah, everything takes longer and costs more money, so I mean, they're re-quoting themselves again. Of course, not everyone agrees to the recent high-profile corporate departures, signaling a kind of comeuppance for California. I think folks have been complaining about California's hostile business environment for decades, and that certainly hasn't prevented the state from being one of the biggest economies in the world and attracting entrepreneurs and businesses for decades, said Molly Turner, who studies the interface of technology, urban policy, and economic development at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business.
Now, look, UC Berkeley, on the whole, has some very good programs of study, especially at the graduate level. Um, However, it's funny coming from that person. She's been in the middle of a lot of these programs for a couple of years now. She's been sort of on advisory boards and writing articles about and talking up the value of city bike share programs on Bloomberg and stuff like this. She's hardly a person opposed to California's direction governmentally.
Right. Yeah, the next quote she makes, I find entertaining. I wonder if that's the one that you were describing to me earlier. All right,
Not even,
I
but
think
yeah, you go ahead.
it's important for us to distinguish between the executives of these companies moving out of the state versus the employees and the offices. Turner said, noting that Elon Musk and Oracle's Larry Ellison, who are both among the wealthiest people in the world, did very well in California, are now moving to lower income tax. Well, yeah, but yeah, they're building new businesses. They're taking stuff out.
Yep.
They're going to pull out some of those factories. You are going to lose those jobs. Not to mention the chunk of tax revenue. And very good for the author here, the article to say in the very next line, there's no doubt California is disproportionately reliant on the top 1% of income earners. Just that 1% is responsible for generating over 45% of all the personal income tax revenue, said
That's
HD.
because there's there's a lot of things. It's somebody pointed out like California should be a paradise. Right? This is like the Africa should be a paradise. Um, there are so many things that make California and the weather and it's pretty and there's there are so many opportunities and there's trade. You have the ports, and so it would be where you'd want to be. which is why they could even get away with what they've gotten away with over the years, just sort of squeezing this top tier, and the top tier doesn't care. They just pony up because they're doing so well.
Right.
But um, you can't get blood from a stone, and when you try, the whole damn thing's gonna collapse.
Yeah, and it's if things were good, why would these businesses leave? They wouldn't.
You
If things
can't.
were good for them,
I mean, you can't
they
make your
wouldn't leave.
policy as though things will always be good.
Well, I mean, like the taxation must be exhausting.
Well, yeah,
A-
but what I'm saying is like it was probably being run right on the edge of what was tolerable, right?
Right,
Painful enough to whine about, but not quite painful enough to leave. The dog lying on the tack moaning. But the problem is, what happens when COVID tips it over the edge, or I don't know, another internet bubble popping, or whatever. Like there could be so many things that take your, oh yeah, these people don't mind being taxed, 55% of their income, but suddenly, their income is reduced by 10% by some other unforeseen event, and now it's beyond just painful. It's unacceptable.
right. And in the next, two tiny lines in the article, they try to talk about how you have these giants. Now, Tesla, Oracle, in my perspective at least, are giants when it comes to the tech world, right? And then they're like, oh, but that hasn't stifled, innovation.
Airbnb, DoorDash. Okay.
Right. I love Airbnb. I
Yeah,
use
I
I
think it's
actually use
excellent.
their
Uh,
main
well,
competitor.
well, so some of these cities are trying to kill it, right? Some of these, and one of my friends actually made an argument to me about why Airbnb has practices um, that are uh, unconscionable. In his mind, it's like, well, there's no guarantee of what you're getting, and people should be required to like. It's like, no. How about you negotiate?
Right. I,
But
I
it's
went
it's
on
like
up
what he
my
wants to do is kill the golden goose. He wants to make it so they have to follow all the damn regulations the hotels have to follow. And it's like, okay, well now it's going to be you're going to be paying significantly more for what you work. Everybody was happy, right, with the arrangement, except the city because it wasn't getting its cut.
right. Right. Well, now the problem is now that you have, Airbnb has just gone public. You had some other organizations that were the exact same thing as Airbnb, just different name, and they got bought out by like Expedia and whatnot. They're going to get taxed. Airbnb users are going to get taxed tremendously. But there's no
Yep.
reason I would spend time at a hotel. My wife and I went on a honeymoon, and we were one block, not even one block, half a block away from Jackson Square in or in New Orleans or New Orleans, your
Nolans.
pronunciation, Nolans, yes. Uh, that's how it was Nolans. Sorry, I'm trying to bring it back. It was very very beautiful being there, but the closest hotel to being in the French Quarter was like northwest, miles away. And why do that when I can be in a very beautiful little area and just walk out and be right there? Um, anyway, I'm stepping away from where I was going. These two businesses, although unique and could have a lot of money, in their futures, are not the giants of Tesla and Oracle.
No,
Uh,
no, and I mean, maybe they could. I perceive them as more fleeting. Maybe DoorDash will be around forever, but it can be very quickly and easily replaced. It's not
right.
as established. So, in any case,
Yeah. So there's always going to be activity that's going to be generated from companies going public. That's like the seismic activity here in California, Palmer said. Palmer also said it's very difficult to evaluate the overall impact that the departure of major companies like Oracle and HP will have on California's bottom line. I wonder. But he says this by no means tells the entire story. Quote, the other side of the coin is we are seeing corporations and entities in California that are continuing to grow, continuing to hire, continue to expand, continue to go public, and generate revenues as well, Palmer said. Still, he says, we want to retain as many of those individuals here as we possibly can to continue to create the environment we can see more of these types of activities. In addition, to taxes, some businesses howl at laws like Assembly Bill 5, directed at companies like Lyft and Uber, as well as the recent one signed by Governor Gavin Newsom.
Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
always mute myself when I start, which is the worst. But so they only hear your response.
Right.
Again, here it is. People want to go after these companies that have found a way, sort of around the edge of that they found in the myriad nightmare laws of California a place to create wealth and make some money and provide a service that people value at a competitive price, and suddenly somebody decides they must be regulated, the workers must be unionized, and so forth and so on, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, what other sectors are threatened, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
taxi drivers come to the politicians and say it's not fair. The Uber driver can work for less than me. Well, it's like, well, that's market value, dude.
You're going to have to find a way around it.
No, well, they do find a way around it. They go to the politicians and they get a bill written.
Right. They go that direction rather than you're looking at pure competition. Um, I mean, there's
I mean,
more to it,
and
but
look, yeah, they make a case. They say, look, I have to have my vehicle inspected. I have to make sure that my brakes have been checked. Now, if you're driving the vehicle, you might say that there's a natural incentive not to
to do that.
die yourself while you're driving
Indeed.
it. But in any case, these are the sorts of arguments they make. That the Uber drivers have not got enough stamps and seals of authority to allow them to do this, and they should also have to pay up.
Right. So, Assembly Bill 5 was about, they mentioned here about making boards more diversified. Um, and then the next quote is coming again from Molly Turner. I think folks have been complaining about California's hostile business environment for decades. Again, it's the same, essentially the same exact quote that we saw from earlier. But she's saying that that is not stopping, big businesses coming to one of the biggest economies in the world and attracting entrepreneurs and businesses for decades. Now, it's not the companies. Oh, it's not that companies don't want to diversify. They do, but they don't like government telling them to do it and how to do it. That's sort of intrusion, said Wonderman of the Bay Area Council.
Yeah,
But
you
the way
think?
yeah, but the way UC Berkeley's Turner sees it, California's biggest problem isn't taxes or regulation, but rather the lack of affordable housing.
So here it is.
Well,
Here's my favorite part. So I just
yeah, I have it highlighted too. I
I've read
think I
up
already
on
know
Turner.
what you're gonna.
All right. So by the way you see, so the problem is not taxes or regulation, but the lack of affordable housing. And then in the same breath, presumably, I mean, I don't know, maybe the writer of the article took it out of context, but in the same section of the article, I think that's really the Achilles heel of this state. We can't continue to build a booming economy without providing enough affordable housing for everybody. Well, I'm sorry. What is it that makes housing expensive in California? It couldn't be regulations that prevent housing from being built in highly desirable areas. It couldn't be that taxes make the cost of living higher than it would otherwise be, the cost of closing a housing purchase higher than it would otherwise be. No, that couldn't be it. It could just be, so what's she saying? The government needs to build this housing? Of
Well,
course.
haven't they?
Of
What have they been
course.
doing with their tax dollars? I thought that's what they were doing. Oh, I remember watching a show and I
She
was
wants to build
waiting.
projects that are going to end up empty.
Right. I remember being at a dentist and watching like some home renovators in California, and they purchased this Bodunk little place. It was like very, very, very tiny, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's like $600,000." I'm looking, what? What? Looking at the size of this place, it was a dump too, and that's what the price was at. Um, I mean, this part, I mean, you saw that. I knew that was the one you were going to look at, but I like.
That's where I'm at. Is there anything else in here that's more shocking than that combination of statements?
Yeah, the median house income. So here, recent
Okay.
data from this recent data from the State Department of Finance shows that despite the pandemic and paltry rate of population growth, year to date home prices are up more than 8%. My home
Huh.
percent went up maybe 2%, 1.8% here in the last year and a half in Pennsylvania, with a median home price in October of $711,300.
Sounds like a builder's paradise. Sounds as though something is keeping supply from meeting demand.
Mm. Turner says that the demand for housing remains so high and ongoing obstacles to the ongoing obstacles.
What would those obstacles be?
There you go. That's the best one.
Ah,
The ongoing obstacles to building more of it, the excess of some tech jobs, isn't all bad. Oh my
I mean, this
god.
is
To the extent that some percentage of jobs are redistributed to other parts of the country, that may in fact make the Bay Area and the state slightly more accessible and affordable to more folks, which I think at the end of the day is good for our innovation economy.
oh, it's good for somebody, but not the average Californian.
That's like you again standing in front of a building on fire. Nothing to see here. This is fine. This was planned out. Don't worry. Oh God.
That's messed up. All right, so along with the theme of Exodus, we have for I guess similar reasons the NRA leaving New York.
Mm-hmm.
Now the NRA is not a money-making enterprise. It is by definition a not-for-profit organization. Um, I think it's self-evident why the NRA and New York don't get along.
Mm-hmm.
They have very different interpretations of the Second Amendment.
That's putting it very mildly, but yes.
Generously to New York, that the Second Amendment is an antiquated thing that is no longer relevant somehow.
I
It
can't
pertains
I,
to
I can't
yeah,
take a
I don't.
paintball gun through New York, like in my
Yeah,
car
no,
in the
you
way.
can't. I mean, I'm afraid to drive to New Jersey, let alone New York.
Right,
I'm afraid that somebody will find something in my car that they say looks like a gun, and I'll end up locked up forever. Um,
right.
so, um, this is not too exciting, so I'm not going to read this whole article, but I'm just going to point out that again, saw this coming. This is being done for political reasons for New York, and it's going to just end up making sense for the NRA. The only reason they were in New York is because they're a very old organization, and
Mm-hmm.
they got founded in New York at a time when, um, you know, those were very popular points of view in New York.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So Texas is an appropriate home for the NRA. What's crazy is like how is it that New York can come after the NRA in such a way that it's hurtful to them and not hurtful to other political nonprofit organizations. Like, can Texas now turn around and go after, I don't know, the Anti Defamation League or Planned Parenthood or whatever Texas decides it doesn't like?
I mean, if they truly desire to do so,
I don't
um,
think that Texas necessarily plays that way, but I mean, this is precedent, right?
right. But I mean, here's the thing, and that's because those organizations, if you were to go after those organizations, particularly right now, I mean, you would look very, very bad. The media would butcher you. Whereas even the word gun is just seen so negatively in our society right now.
Right. So this is the, politics is downstream of culture sort of argument.
Mhm.
And this is where our culture's at. But it's not where Texas culture is at. It's where New York's culture is at.
Right.
But apparently, New York's culture defines the national narrative.
There's a lot of people that would not go where that. Blech, people are barfing right now. Anyway, oh god. I mean, I just see Como's face at the moment, and it just I throw things. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I want to throw things now. So, go on, go on. All right.
I don't know that I have anything here. I mean, I will go on. I'm going to go on to the. So, Parlor's gone. We hadn't even
Oh yeah.
discussed that on here, but I think anybody following this, to the extent that anybody follows this, will be up to date on some of that.
Right.
Um, you know, hey, if you don't like our platform, just go to another platform. Oh, by the way, incidentally,
It's gone.
the three largest companies that host servers in the world won't be hosting it.
Right, right. The,
And that was entirely coincidental.
hmm
They came to their decisions separately. I mean, it's just so. You see in so many spheres now, NRA being kicked out of New York, you could say that that's part of the sort of Exodus tax haven story, but it's also sort of like the New York City will no longer host dissent. And Princeton alumni will no longer accept. Here, I'll share my screen with you so you can see what I'm up to.
hmm
So here we have Princeton kicks out, or reprimands Ted Cruz for, quote, willfully aiding and abetting an insurrection against our country, promoting lies and conspiracy theories to overturn an election, and violating his oath of office to protect a person rather than our Constitution. I'm sure that Ted Cruz would not describe himself as violating the Constitution. He is, if
right,
nothing, a constitutional expert. Look,
right.
I might disagree with some of the things he does or says,
hmm
but I thought dissent was acceptable, and I thought if anybody should have the ability to express unpopular opinions, it should be a senator.
Right.
But Princeton disagrees, and they got all these guys to sign. It's actually not that long a list of people signed.
No.
I mean, I don't know how many Princeton alumni there are, but it's people. To get a long enough list, they had to get people from multiple years.
Yeah.
So why isn't it just his entire class condemning him, his class of 92?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, it's just silly. So it seems to me there's no place where opposing viewpoints are acceptable unless they're the right sorts of conspiracy theories or opposing viewpoints, right? Like there are. It just seems nuts to me. It seems like the free speech is gone. There are places among my friends where I'm genuinely concerned that if I express my point of view about, um, I don't know, voter ID laws, that I
hmm
am propagating, therefore, President Trump's particularly nefarious version of a conspiracy theory about a quote stolen election. Um, and I feel like there ought to be room for some of these. There ought to be room to want some investigation into things.
Right. I
And not
yeah,
be not be lumped in with. But this is it. This is you. We found something bad that happened on the 6th. Therefore, anybody who ever said anything good about Trump, or really anybody who ever voted Republican in their entire life, or whoever wanted anything other than to accept the official New York Times, CNN, Bloomberg narrative of events, will be excoriated and excommunicated.
I mean, it's almost a. I mean, it's a defensive posture. It is. I don't. There is smoke. And I'm not necessarily saying smoke in terms of fraud in the election. There very well could have been. There very well might not have been. But I mean, if there was a
By the way,
way,
you just violated YouTube's policies. So,
right? Yep,
yeah.
I'm sure I did. Okay, I can't even have a discussion.
Yep.
Just the thought crime. Oh, thought
Yeah.
crime.
Well,
Tom
this is
Cruise.
make Orwell fiction again. Okay.
Right,
So
right.
so so that
Tom Cruise is going to break through my window and arrest me. Thought crime.
yeah. I mean, I wish. I wish it was that clear. I have a lot of friends who think of themselves as open-minded and liberal-minded, and who oppose the abridgment of free speech in principle. Um, and yet, and perhaps if it were the other way around, I wouldn't be able to see it. Maybe I would be blind if my political enemies were being stifled in this manner. Um,
But and I think that's the thing, though, is that there were some people that we were having a discussion with on numerous times who,
I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about a conversation at my Sunday afternoon gaming table.
right? I'm,
With some gentlemen who are kind of
yeah,
Gen Xers or baby boomers,
yeah,
and they're bright men, but they're they I live in a purplish state. They're pretty left leaning
Hmm.
generally, but they tolerate me at their table,
Hmm.
and um, they find my position unconscionable.
And I mean, I think this was a conversation that you were involved in, but it's ironic because I had the same thing occur to me months before, where I was sharing a discussion with people I knew about this, general subject, not necessarily just about the election, but about just free speech and what that means, what it used to mean. I mean, go back to the '60s and '70s.
Yeah,
What free speech was on college campuses is no longer what it means now. And that although there are subjects sometimes that are explored or discussed that are considered, I would say unsavory, but just really on the edge.
I'm not a fan of the rhetoric of Malcolm X, but I will die for his right to say things I disagree with.
Exactly. It's important to understand why did this individual have the perspective they did based off their experiences in the time period. And I was having this discussion with some of my friends, and they're like, listen, we understand what you're saying, and I respect your point of view, even though there's some things I don't agree with, but you're different. You may share some of the perspectives of some of these people we don't agree with, but you're a different person.
Oh,
You're
right,
what
right, right. Well, there's this the cognitive
right,
dissonance appears, right, where it's like,
right.
well, those people I saw saying things that I really, really found hateful on television, they
Hmm.
are, um,
The other,
yeah, they are the acceptable target
right.
of all abuse,
All
and
my anger,
you're a person I know, so you must be much more reasonable than those people because I
hmm,
can see you and I know that you're a real human being and I might hurt your feelings. So of course you're not like them.
right. And there you go. It is a form of self defense that, wait a minute, here's a person who does not share my point of views on a variety of subjects, that is not what I have been told is the other, the enemy of my perceptions. And they make valid points from a reasonable position that is not aggressive or mean or, yeah, just not aggressive. No, 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 no. That's not the people I'm trying to stop. It's the other people. Um, I remember my school district when I was in high school, after everything that went down with a number of school shootings, they petitioned the parents to see if they wanted to purchase new metal detectors.
Right.
Right. Well, actually, they didn't even, at the time, we didn't even have metal detectors in the front part
Right.
of the
Right.
building.
I mean, you know,
Right.
I
And
wouldn't
they,
and I wouldn't expect to have, but I have antiquated ideas.
right. And when the school board was going to do this and they wanted to hear what what the parents were thinking. And I can't remember what the vote was, but it was an upward. It was above 80% of the parents said, no, we don't want metal detectors. And the reason they said that is that thing. Now, I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but I think there's a lot in mentality there, psychology. That thing can't happen here. It happened over there. It's happening somewhere else. It won't happen here. Just like you are not. You're not my enemy. You're different.
Yep.
Am I really though?
It's it's like I think that fundamental human nature aspect is a necessary part of being human. You would actually not be able to live with yourself if you didn't have the ability to frame groups of people into a category of people that it is acceptable
Right.
to abuse, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to come home from war and live with yourself. We already have enough hard of a time with it.
Right.
Um, but that's the rhetoric that should be reserved for war, and the last thing I want to see is people who share so much in common with these people that they perceive as the other
Hmm.
to turn on them. I understand if you've you know encountered a culture with whom you can find no common ground and there are irreconcilable differences and there are trying circumstances. Well, bad things happen in human history and sometimes you got to pick sides and it's ugly. but I don't like seeing sides taken among Americans. And
Right.
I'm happy to debate, and you view that word as more of a negative word. You would choose to frame it as a discussion, but
Discussion.
I'm happy to have um, a worthy adversary. I want
Right.
an opponent against which to sharpen myself, someone
Right.
across the chess table with whom to play. As
Right.
long as we recognize that we are playing at war when we debate and not actually engaging in it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we go home and we are both Americans and we live in the same town and we have to deal with the same police officer and the same judge. Well, I don't even know how that is anymore. But
Yeah.
the idea that you go home and you are neighbors,
Right.
and then you enter the public arena where you have a disagreement and you have it out, but and this, by the way, this is one of you want me to criticize Trump? This is one of his worst qualities. He has a tendency to become invective in a personal way. He will
Hmm.
he will he will sink to ad hominem, and
Hmm.
it does not make it better that his enemies do it also. It
Right.
just lowers the conversation for everybody. By the
And
way, Ted
yeah,
Cruz
people
is
follow
not one
that.
of these people.
No.
You could say whatever you want about Ted Cruz. He offers conspiracy theories. He's a weird, Bible thumping, kind of strange Texan guy. He looks funny. He looks like a serial killer. What do you want to say about him? What you cannot say about Ted Cruz is that he sinks to personal attacks.
Yeah. He
In fact,
he avoids that.
the most invective thing he ever did was call a man a liar, believing that the man had lied.
Hmm.
It was
I
just
mean, I mean, the when it was him and Trump, when it was him and Trump going after each other, I think I mean those two went at it a little bit, and still I remember very specifically that Ted Cruz was trying to avoid that at all
pretty
costs.
sure he didn't drag Trump's wife into the discussion.
No, no, that's when Trump was going after
Right. So
his
so
dad.
I don't know. It's just like if this is your target, this is the person you want to tie to Trump's sinking ship and say, yes, this is everything wrong with. I just don't get it. But
No.
because he's willing to defend somebody he disagrees with. Devil's advocate, literally a lawyer. Anyway, I'm going to do some lawyering. I'm going to Milton.
Okay.
Milton's a weird dude. Go look him up. There's so much, but he's a member. He's a voice of the Protestant Reformation. And if he had never written his famous literature, Paradise Lost, and some other works of fiction, um, he would still be famous for his sort of legal justifications of the rights of men against the overbearing power of kings, right? So keep in mind, he's coming from a Christian point of view, and he's coming from a point of view where his opponents are defending the right of kings to rule by divine right.
Hmm.
But he defends speech probably more successfully than anybody since. Um, he was full of himself, but I mean, he had an education. He opens up with a quote from Euripides. If I have, by the time I'm an old dead man, Milton's education that he had when he was 6, I'll die happy. Euripides is this famous Greek playwright. He comes to us from the classical era of Greece, from the 400s BC. And we have like 17 of his plays extant, probably the rest destroyed in the Library of Alexandria or something. Um,
No.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's like 90 of them, so he was the Shakespeare of his time, but we only have
Hmm.
17 plays. But
Right.
anyway, so Milton quotes Euripides in his Areopagitica. A Even that, do I get? Yeah. Okay, so this is an allusion to a place that was important for addresses to the General Assembly of Athens. But
Hmm.
you'll note that if you know your Latin, aereo, out of doors, right? Open,
Hmm.
free, pagetica, page, right? So there's a little bit of a pun in his allusion where he's arguing for the freedom of the written word.
Hmm.
Um, and so he quotes Euripides. This is true liberty, when free men born, having to advise the public may speak free, which he who can and will deserves high praise, who neither can nor will may hold his peace. what can be juster in a state than this? In other words, the best cure for bad speech is more speech. And when the person who is wrong runs out of arguments, they'll hold their tongue, and that should be it. So, by the way, if you want a shortcut to understanding, if you don't have time to read a whole darned article, often if you go to the second to last paragraph, you'll find the meat. So, I have read Areopagitica, but not recently. But I went back through to look for this line, and sure enough, second to last paragraph. So just keep in mind where Milton's coming from. He may not align so much with our modern ideas of separation of church and state, but that's because the idea of separation in of church and state is founded on his arguments and Luther's. So here comes he. I'll just show what he's arguing against the idea that you should have to have a stamp or a license to publish something, to speak directly to the public. That the state shouldn't be able to get in between you and the public.
Right.
So, there have been not a few since the beginning of this Parliament, both of the presbytery, in other words, of the clergy, also, remember, no separation of church and state yet, and others, who by their unlicensed books and contempt of an imprimatur, in other words, contempt for having their works stamped, first broke that triple ice clung about our hearts. This is an allusion to something in Horace, but triple ice, I mean, it's easy enough to understand the language. He's saying 3 times bound, locked up, limited, clung about our hearts, this freezing, this ice that taught people to see the day. In other words, some of you have opened people's eyes by publishing things without asking permission. I hope that none of those who are persuaders to renew upon us this bondage, which they themselves have wrought so much good by contemning. In other words, hilarious to use, I didn't know you could verbify contempt, but he does. Might even be a gerund. So anyway, you had contempt for getting the official stamp, and look what good it did. Look how many people's eyes are opened. I hope none of you who did this are the ones arguing against it now.
Right.
But if neither the check that Moses gave to young Joshua, nor the countermand which our Savior gave to young John, essentially telling John, no, you don't get to decide who comes in, everybody's allowed in, who was so ready to prohibit those he thought unlicensed, be not enough to admonish our elders, that is to say, to lambaste those who are in positions of power, how unacceptable to God their testy mood of prohibiting is. If neither their own remembrance what evil hath abounded in the church by this let of licensing, by allowing licensing to occur. And what good... There's irony laced in that phrase. And what good they themselves have begun by transgressing it. That is to say, look what you accomplished when you broke these rules you want to impose.
Right.
Be not enough, but that they will persuade and execute the most Dominican part of the Inquisition over us. The Dominican being a radical part of the Spanish Inquisition in his time. And are already with one foot in the stirrup, so active at suppressing, it would be no unequal distribution in the first place to suppress the suppressors themselves. Okay, he doesn't let up, right? So he's sort of saying, like, it would be fair to silence you who wish to silence people.
Right.
I would have stopped there, but you can't resist, it seems. Whom the change of their condition hath puffed up more than their late experience of harder times hath made wise. In other words, you who got powerful by taking advantage of this open door now wish to close and lock it
Right.
behind you.
Right.
Jack Dorsey, Mark
God.
Zuckerberg, so forth and so on.
Hmm.
That's all I have to say on the subject of free speech.
It and I mean, I just think of I think of like the 16 and 1700s, in some major cities where you have the town square, the city square, where people would grab their little box and stand on it and just start talking,
Yep.
just have debates and
Well,
discussion.
and often at the risk of their heads, because in
In
many
some
places
cases,
to do
yeah,
so was to do so only at the king's pleasure. I mean,
right.
this was a huge debate in the 16 and 1700s, was whether or not free speech would be permitted. And this is our birthright as Americans,
Hmm.
and we disdain it.
Well, there, the fact that there are people out there who do disdain it, who only want to close the door, as you have described, and to only leave the door open for that which they are accepting of,
Well,
tells a
and
lot.
then express regret that they had to. Why didn't the government clamp down on me so I didn't have to ban these people? It was literally Jack Dorsey's argument last week.
It's just absurd,
Oh,
absolutely
this
absurd.
is a pain on my conscience. I wish I didn't have so much power. I mean, it's hard to take that in good faith.
Utterly.
That's all I have this week. I mean, I've got my. You get a double helping of culture because we skipped culture last time. So
Ugh.
you get. Oh, let's see. We did this a bit about the horse, so I think we're up to number 7 here.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about a ship.
All right. As in a voyage, when the ship is at anchor, if you go on to shore, if you go on shore to get water, you may amuse yourself with picking up a shellfish or a truffle in your way, but your thoughts ought to be bent towards the ship, and perpetually attentive, lest the captain should call, and then you must leave all these things, that you may not have to be. I can see where this is going. That,
Hmm.
that you may not have to be carried on board the vessel, bound like a sheep. Thus, likewise in life, if instead of a truffle or a shellfish, such a thing as a wife or a child be granted you, there is no objection. But if the captain calls, run to the ship. Leave all these things, and never look behind. But if you are old, never go far from the ship, lest you should be missing when called for. Again, this is not abandon your wife and child.
Right, which someone will get certainly take that as.
Right. This is keep in mind that all the things of this life, everything you build for yourself, is temporary. And be ready that you can answer for your life, that your soul is at peace. And that is the definition of being prepared to leave.
Hmm. And I think he's also kind of aiming at the idea of not stepping so far away from the ship. Don't go beyond your means. Don't go beyond.
Right?
Uh,
Don't take responsibility for things that you are not going to be able to handle. Right? Like
right,
if you um, don't start things, you're not going to be able to finish.
right. Hmm.
So there's Epictetus. That's probably enough trouble for one day.
Yeah,
I hope we can resume or reach a place collectively among our friends and hopefully in the near future um, where people can agree um, that it is beneficial to hear things they dislike.
and yeah, because of how just important that is. I mean, I don't know. I sit there and I think about Charleston and watching, Americans really just go after each other for a statue. But now the statue has meaning, but it just,
Yeah, I don't like to see it, and again, like I, I'm not a fan of iconoclasm.
right.
So, which again, like means that I would not destroy a symbol that I disagreed with if it was lawfully in place and put there by people before my time, or if there was artwork to it. I mean, I'd like to think down I would take down a swastika in the town
Right.
square, but again, I would want the government to take it down.
Right. Well, and if there was,
I
if
wouldn't.
you guys sat there and voted on it, as much as
Right.
everyone has their personal
I would
perceptions.
expect the government to take it down. If the
Right.
government had put it up, I think I would be at war with that government.
Right.
Right.
I mean, put those things in a museum. Do not destroy them. Do
Yeah.
not.
In fact, in all truth, even the horrible Nazi symbol, I wanted in a museum to remain there as evidence that these bad people existed, that these bad ideas existed, and bad things happened as a result. I don't want to wipe away the history.
Right. Right. So, yeah, I think that's a good place for us to end today.
Yep.
There's definitely more of it. I'm sure is going to come up. We have another week of watching and listening and digging through the brush to see what else we can find, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot. And we're only, was it 4 days away from
Yeah.
the inauguration?
It's been a
So,
long uh, 20. It's been a long 2021 already. It feels.
right, right, and I'm sure we have a lot left to go.
Yep.
So,
Well, I am the cabinet.
and I am the department chair, and we will see you guys next time. Have a good one.